Hello boys and girls, it's Fog. Welcome back. This is Redstone 101. Now that version 1.5 of Minecraft, the Redstone update is out, things have changed in the Redstone world, and it is time that we took a look at some of these. I'm back here in our little Redstone world, and it's time to start looking at what has changed in version 1.5 and update things just a little bit. Okay, well, along our little track we passed a bunch of stuff, and all of that still applies. All the stuff we learned there is still applicable. However, once we get to here, things have changed a little bit. The timings have changed, the timings for things have changed, and so some of these things don't work exactly the way they used to. And the first thing is our leading edge pulse emitter. This guy still works, however, it is no longer possible to get a one-tick pulse out of this guy. So, let's get up here and you will see that that is now a two-tick pulse, not a one-tick pulse. So, this design is great if all you want is a two-tick pulse, but you can't get any smaller. The same is true for this design. It's a trailing edge pulse emitter, and again, you only get a two-tick pulse, not a one-tick pulse anymore. This is also a pulse emitter, and it works on the same principle, and you're going to get a two-tick pulse, no longer a one-tick pulse. Notice that that guy's no longer dropping his block as he should with a one-tick pulse. So what do we do about that? Well, there are a couple of things we can do. There is now a new behavior with repeaters that we can take advantage of. If we take a repeater and put some power into it, just like this, into the side, we get this behavior right there. That is what's called a locked repeater. Repeaters powered from the side now lock, and they won't let any power through. So, if you put a repeater lock like this, that gives you a way to get a one-tick pulse out of this repeater. See, it's locking the repeater there, and now we get a one-tick pulse out of it. And this design, while broken a little while ago in more recent builds, this is working again. So that makes a great one-tick pulse. You can also do a one-tick pulse with a vertical piston like this. And we need either a repeater on this side or on the other side. But either way, that'll get you a one-tick pulse. That's a very reliable way to get a one-tick pulse now. So let's move on to the next thing. So like I said, the timings for certain things have changed, and that has affected some of our TFlipflops. This solid state TFlipflop, yeah, it's broken. Now I've played around with this a bit and tried to come up with another way to get this configuration to work, and in 1.5 I'm afraid I have been unsuccessful to get this solid state TFlipflop to work. The good news is this one here works perfectly, and quite frankly this is the better design anyway. So use this design for your TFlipflops, not that one. And of course this old standby still works great. In fact, you can now improve on this old standby a little bit, because you can replace this with the new Redstone Block. And that works great, which means, of course, that you can get rid of that torch down there and compact this even farther. So now you have a true 2x4 T flip-flop. So let's talk a little bit about some of the new things in the 1.5 update. And I suppose the logical place to start is with the new Redstone block. So the Redstone block is crafted. Let's get a crafting table up here and some redstone. I'm sure many of you know this, but it's crafted by taking 9 redstone and combining them into a single block. That's how we get a block of redstone. Now what the redstone block does is it provides a power source exactly like a torch for all intents and purposes. It's a block, it's a powered block. Well, let's back up. It's not exactly like a torch. This is a block that's providing power in exactly the same way as a powered block does. So exactly the same as this one right there. This block here behaves exactly like a block placed above a torch. And that is, it provides a constant source of redstone at a consistent power level. And I believe, let's just quick find out here. Do these have exactly the same intensity? The behavior is the same, but is the intensity the same? Look at that, it is. It's exactly the same in all respects. Now, the advantage to using a redstone block, of course, is that it can be moved with pistons, as we saw back there. So that is a huge win. It's also really handy for combining your little redstone dust and having it take a lot less space in your inventory. So, redstone block, excellent new addition to the game. All right, let's talk about pressure plates. The new pressure plates. We have weighted pressure plates heavy, weighted pressure plate light. These both do the same thing. One of the new features of the 1.5 release is redstone. While it has always had an intensity and decayed after a certain level, now that intensity has more uses and can be used to signify different things. So let's talk about how that relates to our pressure plates. These pressure plates only respond to items. You throw an item on and then they register a certain intensity of redstone signal. Now, these guys are built, they're crafted like this. 2 gold ingots gets you a weighted pressure plate. 2 silver ingots gets you a heavy weighted pressure plate. Now, the difference between the two is how much weight it takes for the intensity to change. So if I throw one item on here, that now has 1 level of intensity that it outputs. If I throw 2 items on it, 3, 4, 5, so at 5 it jumped, 6, 7, 8, it jumps again. So this one jumps with every few items. This one registers 1 with the first item, but then you have to toss in a whole bunch more items before it's going to register another right there. And I'm not going to go into details about exactly at what point it registers additional items. I'm going to let you look that up for yourself on the wiki or just play around with it. It doesn't take too long to figure it out. So that is the weighted pressure plates. I'll tell you right now, while they're kind of cool, in my opinion, they're of pretty limited use. All right, well, let's talk about something that isn't of such limited use. Let's talk about one of these. That's a hopper. Now, hoppers are super, super awesome. This is one of the best additions in the game, in my opinion, and let me show you how you build one. You put a, not a trap chest, you put a chest in the middle, and you surround it like that. You make a V around it with iron ingots, and you get a hopper. Now, what can you do with a hopper? Well, a hopper accepts items and moves it around. So if I drop an item inside this hopper, it'll get sucked up into one of those slots. Like that. Now you notice that every different item type I throw into this hopper takes up another slot. Now, items that can stack, say these gold ingots, I can throw multiple of those items into the hopper and they'll get placed in a stack in the hopper. So, and it doesn't matter what order they're thrown in, they'll still stack. But once this is full of items, if I try to throw any more items in there, it won't accept the item anymore. Okay, so that's interesting, but what can you do with it? Well, one of the things that you can do with it is you can use it to move items around into something like into another container, such as a chest. So if I put this hopper here and I throw a couple of things into this hopper, whoops, like that, they end up in the chest here because the hopper is pointed into the chest. You can also point a hopper into the side of things. By the way, I'm using shift click here to get it to point at the chest instead of opening the chest. And now if I put items in this hopper, they get funneled into the chest. Now there's one other really important thing you need to know about hoppers, and that is that if you apply a power source to the hopper, like in this case, this hopper is being powered by that item, by that torch right there, while the hopper won't accept items. It's basically shut off like a valve. Remove the torch, and now it begins to accept items again. You can do all sorts of really cool things with that. All right, now let's talk about this addition to the game. This is nether quartz ore. It's found in the nether. If you use a pick on this, you're going to get this, nether quartz. And nether quartz can be used to create all sorts of new gadgets in the game now. If I take a row of stone down there, place a row of stone there, and I put a torch there, redstone torch there, and a piece of nether quartz in the middle, I get a redstone comparator. This is one of the new cool items in the game that is super awesome, and let's take a minute to talk about what it does. So a redstone comparator takes an input in the back, it takes an input in the side, either one, and it puts an output out the front. In the normal mode, what it does is it takes an input at a certain intensity level and just outputs that same intensity level. So this intensity right here will be 15, 14, 13. So right on the other side, it's going to be 13. Now if I also take this input and make this input higher than that, it compares the two and turns it off, because this input right here is 15 and this one is 13. 15 is higher than 13, so that's turned off. Now you can see that if I put a torch here, it's going to go off, but if I put a torch here, it doesn't, because this intensity level is now the same as that intensity level. Now the other mode that it has is called subtract mode. And what this does is it subtracts this intensity level from that one. So here we have an intensity level of 13, so we're going to output 13. This intensity level is now 0. 13 minus 0, 13. If I put this torch right here, now we have an input of 13 on the A input. We have an input of 12 on the B input. And so we output 1, an intensity level of 1. Very, very powerful. Furthermore, it's interesting to note that if the input level here is higher than the input of that, there's no such thing as a negative intensity. So this is outputting at 0. So that's the basic operation of the comparator. But wait, you can do more with it. If you place down an item that's a container, such as this dropper, and what is a dropper? Well, a dropper is just the same as a dispenser, except if I put something in here like, say, let's do this. With a dispenser, if I were to power a dispenser with a water bucket in it, then you'd get water all over the place. But if I power a dispenser with a dropper with a water bucket in it, it just drops the water as an item. Okay, so if I take a comparator and put a comparator in the back of a container, such as a dropper or a dispenser or a hopper or a chest, then what happens is this comparator will now output an intensity level based on how many items are in the dropper. So here we have a nearly full stack, and it's outputting an intensity of 2. Put in a little more. Now we get an intensity level of 4. So this all the way up to 16 becomes basically a percentage for how full this item is. And that same thing works for chests, it works for hoppers, it works for all sorts of things. Furthermore, it's interesting to note that this behavior will work through a block, a single block, like that. This makes it very handy to do things like put your chests on the other side of a wall from your redstone. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is one of these guys. You take some wooden slabs, lay them down, put a row of nether quartz on top of that, and a row of glass on top of that, and you get one of these jobbers. It's a daylight sensor. This is now the new and improved way to detect light intensity. You place this guy down, and he will output light in varying intensities based on the time of day. At night, it drops down considerably, and then as the sun goes down even farther, you'll notice that this is going to drop even farther. So now we're only outputting 3. Shortly we'll be outputting only 2. There we go. Be aware that this guy behaves differently when it's exposed to the sky versus when it isn't. So make sure you plan accordingly. The other thing that I want to talk about is one of these. If you take a chest and you combine it with a tripwire hook, you end up with one of these. This is a trapped chest. And what a trapped chest works is perhaps a misnomer. Well, all it really is a chest that when combined with a repeater generates a redstone signal when opened. Just like that. You open the chest, the light comes on. Alright, well there are a lot of things that I could talk about this, but this being a Redstone 101 video, I want to keep it kind of simple. But I do want to go into a couple of little things that are kind of handy to know about. So this here is a comparator, of course. And if I put a comparator here and put an input into it, and then loop it around like this, put it in subtract mode, and put a couple of redstone off the end of it like that, now I have a rapidly pulsing clock. That's 1 tick on, 1 tick off. Very, very fast. Now you can do all sorts of things with this. You can combine this with a dispenser like this. Actually, let's do that. We need some of these. Combine that with a dispenser, put some arrows in it, and now you have a rapid firing arrow gun or a turret. Now one other thing that I want to talk about with comparators is that a comparator, as I mentioned before, will output a signal of a given intensity that matches the input. So if I put a switch here, this is now inputting an input strength of 14, and it will output the same strength. Now you can also extend this one by putting a block there, and then you can put a redstone there or a redstone there, and now it's outputting there at exactly this intensity right there. Now if we take this, we can go one farther. We can do this with it. And now what we have is we have a memory cell, because when I turn this off, this is taking this input, putting it into there, outputting it here at exactly the same intensity, putting it through there, outputting here at exactly the same intensity, and it goes in an endless loop. So the output over here stays on even though the input is turned off. All right, now I can do one better than that. If I set this on subtract mode and put an input into the side of this comparator, now I have a reset line, and I can reset the memory cell. To make this even better, put a repeater there so that you're sure this is immediately getting a full strength signal. And now, the instant that turns on, the output will decay completely to zero. So here you have a memory cell that will remember the intensity that you put into it and allow you to reset that intensity on command. Now before I'm done, let's do one more thing. Let's do an auto-firing dispenser. We'll put a dispenser here. We'll put a bunch of arrows into it. Actually, we'll get ready to put a bunch of arrows into it. Now remember I said that if you have a comparator out the back like that, then it will turn on whenever anything is placed inside. So all we have to do is do something like this. And now what we have is whenever anything is placed inside, do that as well. Whenever anything is placed inside this dispenser, it's going to turn on this comparator, which is going to start a feedback loop through here, and this is going to start flashing, and that flashing is going to cause the dispenser to fire. Just like that. Pretty nifty. So we can do something like this. Replace that dispenser with a dropper, and now you have a very handy way to move items around, no matter what they are. Well, that's it for this extra edition of Redstone 101. I could go into a lot more depth on a lot of these things, but I think that's enough for the basics. You're going to see all of these things coming up a lot in future builds. And indeed, we've already seen most of these things being used a lot in builds that took advantage of the snapshots. So anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for hitting the like button. Thanks for telling your friends about Redstone 101. And I will talk to you all again next time.